The hospital room was quiet, filled with soft beeping sounds and the gentle rain tapping on the window. Ariba lay on the hospital bed, her face tired but glowing. Her hair was messy, her hands weak, but her eyes were full of love. In her arms, wrapped in a soft white blanket, lay a tiny baby girl. Her skin was soft like cotton, her fingers no bigger than flower petals, and her little eyes were still closed. But her quiet breathing filled the room with warmth. Faison stood by Ariba's side, staring at their daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. He gently touched the baby's hand. "She's perfect," he whispered. Ariba smiled, her eyes moist. "She looks like you." Faison shook his head. "She's beautiful. So, she must look like you." They both smiled, but then Ariba's smile faded into emotion. Tears ran down her cheeks. She wasn't crying out of pain. She was crying from everything she had been through. Being ignored, being insulted, being left outside when she was pregnant and weak. The cold rain, the locked door, the betrayal. But now, that same rain was falling again, outside this hospital window. Only this time, it wasn't a curse. It was peace. "Do you remember that night?" she whispered, "when they left me outside in the rain?" Faison nodded slowly, his face darkening. "I thought I would die there," she said quietly. "I was so scared. I thought our baby wouldn't survive." Faison held her hand tightly. "But you did survive. You fought for both of you." Ariba looked down at her daughter. "She gave me the strength. Even inside me, she was my light." Faison nodded. "Then we will call her Noor." Ariba looked at him, surprised. "Yes," Faison said, "because even in the darkness, she gave you light. She gave us light." Ariba kissed Noor's forehead and whispered, "You're our sunshine after the storm." Outside the room, doctors and nurses smiled as they walked by. Even they knew the story. The woman who was once insulted had now become a symbol of grace and strength. Down the hallway, Zoya sat alone in a waiting chair. No one called her. No one looked at her. She had come to see what she had lost forever, but no one even allowed her inside. She saw Faison through the glass window, smiling, holding his baby, loving his wife. Zoya wiped her tears and walked away silently. Her chapter had ended. Back in the room, Ariba was now resting. Faison sat near her, holding little Noor close to his chest. He gently rocked her back and forth, whispering, "No matter what comes, I will protect you. I will protect your mother. We're a family now. No one can hurt us anymore." He looked out the window at the rain. But this time, it didn't feel cold. It felt like a blessing. The lights of the office party flickered brightly in the grand hall, casting a golden glow over the beautiful decorations and the well-dressed guests. Laughter and chatter filled the air as employees mingled, sipping champagne and discussing the latest office gossip. It was a celebration. The company had just signed a huge deal, and everyone was excited. But there was one person who wasn't looking forward to it at all. Adil stood at the door, his hand shaking as he looked at the woman beside him. She was dressed in a long, worn-out coat that didn't match the luxurious setting. Her hair was tangled, and her shoes were scuffed from walking in the cold. Her face was tired, and her eyes seemed to hold a deep sadness. Yet there was something beautiful about her, something that stood out even in her state of discomfort. Adil took a deep breath and gently took her hand. "Come on, it'll be okay," he whispered, giving her a reassuring smile. She didn't respond, just nodded and followed him inside, her steps hesitant and unsure. As they walked through the room, the noise slowly began to fade. People stopped talking. Their eyes turned toward them. Some people raised an eyebrow, others whispered behind their hands. "Who is she?" One of the employees muttered. "Why is Adil bringing her here?" Someone else asked in a low voice. Adil could feel their stares. He knew they were judging, but he didn't care. He had to do this. He had to bring her here, because she deserved to be seen, to be noticed for who she was, not for the clothes she wore or the mistakes that had been made. The woman looked down, avoiding the stares, her face reddening. Adil gently squeezed her hand, offering her some comfort. But as they walked further into the room, something strange happened. The door at the far end of the room swung open, and Mr. Kamal, the CEO of the company, walked in. The room seemed to hold its breath. Everyone straightened up, instinctively quieting as the powerful man made his way across the room. His presence was commanding, and everyone respected him. But when Mr. Kamal saw the woman standing next to Adil, his expression froze. His eyes went wide. His body stiffened, and for a moment, it looked like time had stopped. Adil noticed it immediately. His heart skipped a beat. He turned to look at the woman beside him, wondering if she had noticed the change in the air. She hadn't. Her gaze was still on the floor, her hand trembling slightly in his. Mr. Kamal's face, usually so calm and collected, had turned pale. His mouth opened slightly, as though he wanted to say something, but no words came out. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, just staring at the woman. "Mr. Kamal," one of the other employees asked, breaking the silence. The CEO snapped out of his trance, quickly hiding his shock behind a mask of professionalism. But his hand shook as he adjusted his suit. He quickly walked past Adil and the woman, not even sparing them a second glance. The tension in the room was thick. Everyone had noticed Mr. Kamal's reaction. Some employees exchanged nervous glances. Was there something they didn't know? What was going on? Adil felt the weight of the situation. He had planned on introducing her to the company, to show them that she wasn't just a stranger. But now, everything seemed different. The air felt heavy with unspoken questions. The woman beside him shifted uncomfortably. Her gaze remained locked on the floor, and she tugged at her coat nervously. She didn't belong here. She knew that. But Adil had insisted. He had promised her that this moment would mean something. He had promised her that she deserved to be here. But as Mr. Kamal walked past them, a sense of dread filled the room. Adil could feel the weight of the CEO's gaze on the back of his neck. He had seen the way Mr. Kamal had reacted. Something about this woman was connected to him. But what? "Are you okay?" Adil whispered to the woman beside him. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were distant, lost in thought, like she was somewhere else entirely. "I'm fine," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. But her words didn't carry the strength Adil was hoping to hear. Her voice trembled. Adil could feel the growing tension in the room. He wasn't sure if it was the CEO's reaction or the fact that no one knew who she was. The whispers had started again, growing louder. "Who is she?" someone asked, more openly this time. "Adil, why are you with her?" Another voice chimed in, clearly uncomfortable. Adil's heart raced, but he refused to let it show. He stood up straighter, wrapping his arm around the woman's shoulders in a protective gesture. "Her name is Maya," he said loudly enough for the room to hear. "And she's not just anyone. She's important." A few people raised their eyebrows, but no one said anything. The room was still. Adil could feel everyone waiting for him to explain, but he wasn't sure how to explain something that he himself didn't fully understand. The woman beside him trembled slightly, and Adil's heart softened. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her. "I shouldn't have brought you here. I'll take you home." But before he could move, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't the CEO. It was someone else. Someone who would change everything. The party had taken a strange turn. The elegant music, the laughter, and the excitement of the celebration now felt distant. Every step Adil took through the room, with Maya by his side, felt like walking through thick fog. The weight of the stares, the whispers, the judgment, they all pressed down on him. As soon as Maya had entered the room, she had felt the sudden shift in the atmosphere. It was as if all the joy and brightness of the office party had dimmed. People who had been laughing and mingling only seconds before now turned their heads to stare, their conversations halting mid-sentence. Maya's face flushed with embarrassment, and she instinctively pulled the collar of her coat higher, trying to hide herself. Adil noticed her discomfort. He could feel the tension in the air, but he wasn't going to back down. He had made a promise to her, and he intended to keep it. He would stand by her no matter what. A voice broke the silence. It was Nida, one of the senior employees, known for her sharp tongue. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Maya, her eyes scanning the worn-out clothes and the tired face. "Adil," she began, her voice dripping with condescension. "What exactly is this? Why would you bring her here? A party like this is for people who have worked hard, who have a place in this company, not for someone like her." Adil's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond right away. Nida's words were harsh, but he had been prepared for them. He knew the judgment would come, but it still hurt. Maya, standing beside him, didn't say a word. She didn't look at anyone, keeping her gaze low as if she wished she could disappear. But Nida wasn't finished. "Do you honestly think this is the right place for her?" Nida's eyes flicked over Maya's clothes again, her face twisted in disgust. "This is a celebration of success, not a place for people like her." Maya flinched at the words, but Adil stood his ground. "You don't know her. You don't know what she's been through," he said firmly. "Maya has more strength in her than anyone here." But his voice, though filled with conviction, couldn't stop the whispers. They were everywhere now, spread like wildfire. "Who is she, really?" someone muttered. "What's her connection to Adil?" Adil could hear the questions, the doubts, the ridicule. It stung, but he refused to let it show. He was used to being misunderstood. He had been for most of his life. But Maya, she didn't deserve this. "Adil, you're making a mistake." Another voice spoke up. It was Farhan, a colleague who often pretended to be friendly but couldn't hide his true thoughts. "You don't bring someone like her into a professional environment. You're making everyone uncomfortable." Maya's grip on his hand tightened, but she still didn't say anything. Adil turned to her, trying to offer her some comfort, but it was clear she was barely holding herself together. He hated that this was happening to her, that she was being treated like this. "We should go," Maya whispered, her voice so soft it barely reached his ears. "I don't belong here." "No, Maya," Adil said, shaking his head. "You belong here just as much as anyone else. You belong in the world, not hidden away in the shadows." He turned back to the crowd, trying to ignore the growing discomfort all around them. "This woman," he said, his voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear, "saved my life." A few people snickered. Others exchanged confused glances. They didn't understand. They couldn't. Adil took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He knew this moment would be difficult, but he hadn't expected it to be this hard. "This is Maya. She was there for me when I had nothing. She took care of me when the world turned its back on me. She deserves more respect than any of you are showing her right now." His voice rang out, challenging anyone who dared to speak against her. The room was silent, except for the faint sound of murmurs spreading through the crowd. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Adil," Mr. Kamal said. His voice was quiet, but it held an undeniable authority. He had approached them without anyone noticing. "Please, come with me for a moment." Adil hesitated, but Maya gave him a small nod. She was trying to be brave, but her eyes spoke of her fear. "Go," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'll wait here." Adil didn't want to leave her alone in a room filled with judgmental eyes, but he knew that he couldn't avoid Mr. Kamal forever. He nodded and walked toward the CEO, his heart heavy. As he passed through the crowd, the whispers continued. Why does he care so much about her? What's his connection with her? There was so much suspicion in the air, so much doubt. Adil couldn't answer them. He didn't need to. All he knew was that Maya had given him a second chance at life. And now, it was his turn to protect her, no matter what anyone thought. As Adil and Mr. Kamal disappeared into a side room, Maya stood alone, her hands trembling. She felt the weight of the eyes on her, but she didn't let them see her hurt. Instead, she stood tall and tried to remind herself why she was here. She had been brought to this party by Adil, and she would not let their cruel words break her. She was more than the clothes she wore. She was more than the past that had tried to define her. And soon, she would show them all. Adil followed Mr. Kamal into a quieter side room, away from the buzzing noise of the party. The door clicked shut behind them, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. The room was dimly lit, with a long, heavy desk in the center and framed photos of the CEO's family on the walls. Mr. Kamal didn't sit. He just stood by the window, looking out over the city below, his back stiff and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Adil stood there, waiting for the conversation to begin. But the silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity. Adil shifted from foot to foot, wondering what Mr. Kamal was thinking. He had seen the shock in the CEO's eyes when he'd first entered the room and laid eyes on Maya. There was something about her, a familiarity, a connection that no one else seemed to understand. Finally, Mr. Kamal spoke, his voice tight with emotion. "Adil, do you have any idea who you brought into this office?" His words were sharp, but they held a deep, hidden pain. Adil blinked, taken aback. "She's just Maya," he said softly. "She's the woman who helped me when I was homeless. She saved my life when no one else cared." Mr. Kamal turned slowly to face him. His face was pale, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he just stared at Adil, his eyes flickering with something unreadable. "You have no idea what you've done," Mr. Kamal whispered, his voice cracking. "You don't know who she really is." Adil's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Maya is just Maya. She doesn't deserve to be treated like this. She deserves respect. She deserves a chance to be seen for who she really is." Mr. Kamal ran a hand through his graying hair, his eyes filled with regret. "I don't know if I can explain this to you in a way you'll understand. But that woman, she's my sister." Adil's eyes widened. "Your sister?" "Yes," Mr. Kamal said, his voice soft but full of pain. "Her name is Samira. Samira Kamal." Adil took a step back, shocked by the revelation. Samira Kamal. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he didn't fully grasp the weight of it until Mr. Kamal continued. "She was my sister before everything fell apart," Mr. Kamal said, his voice filled with bitterness. "Samira was. She was brilliant, kind, and full of life. But she was also naive. She made mistakes, terrible mistakes. And in this world, mistakes like hers can ruin everything." Adil felt his chest tighten. What happened to her? Where did she go? Mr. Kamal's eyes darkened. "She was accused of embezzling money from the family business. A scandal that nearly destroyed everything my father worked for. We lost everything. Reputation, trust, family. It was a disaster." Adil shook his head. "But that's not her fault, is it?" Mr. Kamal's face hardened. "It wasn't. But no one believed her. She swore she was innocent. I believed her. But after everything that happened, she disappeared. She left without a word. She didn't take a single thing with her. She just vanished." Adil's heart sank as he listened to Mr. Kamal's words. He could see the pain in the CEO's eyes, the weight of the guilt and regret that had followed him for all these years. "She disappeared for years," Mr. Kamal continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I was the one who helped make her disappear. I convinced her to leave, to go somewhere far away where no one would find her. I thought it was the only way to protect her. But I never heard from her again." Adil's mind was spinning. The pieces were falling into place, but it didn't make sense. How could the woman standing beside him, the one who had been homeless for so long, be connected to a man like Mr. Kamal? How could she have been the same woman who had been part of the scandal that nearly ruined him? "I don't understand," Adil said, his voice shaking. "If she was your sister, why? Why is she out there on the streets? Why was she living like that? Mr. Kamal closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. I don't know. After everything that happened, I tried to reach her, but she was gone. I thought she had started a new life, that she had moved on. But then, I saw her. Tonight. And for the first time in all these years, I realized she hadn't forgiven me. Adil stood there, speechless. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. He had no idea that the woman he had helped, the woman who had taken care of him when no one else would, was the same person tied to a dark family secret. I don't know how to fix this, Adil, Mr. Kamal said, his voice cracking. I betrayed her. I let her slip away, and I never even tried to make it right. All these years, I've lived with the regret of not doing more to help her. Adil swallowed hard, trying to process everything he had just learned. The CEO wasn't just a powerful businessman. He was a man broken by the pain of losing his sister, a woman he had failed in more ways than one. I don't know how to help her, Mr. Kamal whispered. But I need to. I have to make things right. For her. For me. For the family I had destroyed. Adil didn't know what to say. He could see the sincerity in Mr. Kamal's eyes, the desperation. But he also saw something else, a man who had tried to bury his past, only to find that it had come rushing back with a vengeance. Adil took a step forward, his voice steady. You have a chance to make it right, Mr. Kamal. Don't let it slip away. Mr. Kamal nodded, wiping his eyes. I won't. I promise you. I won't. The tension in the side room was palpable. Adil felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. Everything he thought he knew about Maya had been flipped on its head. She wasn't just a woman who had helped him when he had nothing. She was someone's sister, someone powerful's sister. The connection between Maya, who had been living on the streets, and Mr. Kamal, the CEO of a successful company, was now painfully clear. But the question that still hung heavy in the air was why she had fallen so far. Adil stood still for a moment, trying to process everything. He had no idea how to fix the mess that had been created over the years. The pain Mr. Kamal had shown, the regret in his eyes, was something Adil had never expected from the stoic CEO. There was so much hurt in that room, so much unresolved history between a brother and his sister, each carrying a heavy burden. I still don't understand, Adil said, breaking the silence. His voice was quieter now, more uncertain. Why didn't she come back? Why didn't she reach out to you? Mr. Kamal lowered his head, as if the weight of the memories was too much for him to bear. After everything happened, Samira felt betrayed. By me, by the whole family. We were all convinced she was guilty. But we were wrong. He clenched his fists at his sides. I was wrong. And she left. We didn't even try to find her. We just let her go. Adil could see the deep remorse in Mr. Kamal's eyes. He could feel it in his voice. But even so, Adil wasn't sure what to do with this information. Maya, Samira, had lived a life of suffering, all because of a misunderstanding, a mistake made by her own family. And now, the same family that had once turned its back on her was standing in front of her, trying to piece together what was left. Adil felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. He knew Maya was stronger than anyone could understand, but he also knew that the scars of her past ran deep. He couldn't just walk away from this, not now. He had to help her, but he wasn't sure how. Mr. Kamal was just as lost as he was. I have to talk to her, Mr. Kamal said suddenly, his voice filled with urgency. I have to apologize. I can't let her live like this anymore, hiding in the shadows. Adil nodded slowly, still trying to wrap his mind around everything. But she might not be ready to talk to you. After everything that's happened, it's going to take time. I know, Mr. Kamal replied, his voice shaking, but I'll do whatever it takes. I owe her that much. Adil looked at Mr. Kamal, seeing a man who was desperate for redemption. He wasn't the same CEO he had once seen as untouchable and powerful. Now he was a man stripped of his pride, desperate to right the wrongs of the past. Maybe you could start by showing her that you care, Adil said thoughtfully. Not just with words, but with actions. She's been hurt. It's not just about what happened in the past. It's about what you're willing to do now. Mr. Kummel nodded, wiping his eyes again. You're right. I can't fix everything in one conversation, but I can start by showing her that I'm sorry. A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Mr. Kummel looked up sharply, his posture stiffening. Adil knew it was time to face the reality outside of this room. He followed Mr. Kummel's gaze as the door opened, revealing Maya standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red from holding back tears, her face pale. She looked exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Adil's heart clenched at the sight of her. This was a woman who had already been through so much, and now she was caught in the middle of a storm that wasn't of her making. I don't know what to do, Maya whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted any of this. I never wanted to be a part of all this mess. Mr. Kummel's expression softened as he walked towards her. Samira. His voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry. I never should have let you leave. I should have fought for you. I failed you. Maya recoiled slightly, her hands shaking. You failed me, she repeated, her voice quiet but full of disbelief. You failed me when you didn't believe me, when you let me go without a word. Tears welled in her eyes as she continued, her voice trembling with emotion. I was your sister, and you treated me like a criminal, like I wasn't even human. You let me fall, and no one came to pick me up. Adil stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Maya's arm. He could see the raw pain in her eyes. It was the pain of years of being abandoned, years of being told she wasn't good enough. The bitterness of betrayal ran deep in her veins, and no apology could undo that damage. Maya, Adil said softly, his voice full of compassion. You're not alone anymore. We can figure this out together. She turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude, but also sadness. I don't know how to forgive him. I don't know if I can. After everything I've been through, it feels impossible. Mr. Kummel stepped closer, his voice trembling. I don't expect forgiveness right away, Samira. I don't deserve it. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. I won't stop until you see that I'm truly sorry. I owe you that. The room fell silent as the weight of Mr. Kummel's words hung in the air. For a long moment, no one spoke. Maya stood there, torn between the man who had once been her brother and the man who had hurt her more than anyone else. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she whispered, I don't know what to say. And that was all that needed to be said. The conversation wasn't over, but for now, it was a start. The air in the room felt thick with tension, as if every breath Maya took was weighted by years of pain. Mr. Kummel had apologized. Adil had tried his best to offer comfort, but none of it seemed to make the past go away. None of it could erase the years Maya had spent alone, forgotten by the very people who should have protected her. Maya stood in the middle of the room, her eyes flickering between Mr. Kummel and Adil. Her mind was a storm, thoughts swirling, her heart caught between the past and the present. She had spent so long surviving on her own, building walls so high that even now, standing in front of the man who had once been her brother, she didn't know if she could ever bring herself to forgive him. Adil watched Maya, his heart aching for her. He had never imagined the pain she carried. She had always seemed so strong, so independent, but now he saw the cracks, the vulnerability she had worked so hard to hide. She was more fragile than anyone had ever known. You don't have to say anything right away, Adil said quietly, sensing the storm brewing in her eyes. Take your time, Maya. You don't have to forgive him just because he apologized. Maya's eyes flickered to him, a brief moment of gratitude in her gaze before it was gone, replaced by a deep sorrow. I want to forgive him, she said softly, her voice breaking. I really do. But can I just forget everything that happened? Mr. Kummel's voice cracked, full of emotion. I know I can't ask you to forget, Samira. I don't even deserve your forgiveness. I want to try and make things right. I can't undo what happened, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix it." Maya shook her head, tears welling up again. "But you didn't just hurt me, Kamal. You hurt us. The whole family. I'm not the only one who suffered. I don't even know where to begin, or if I even can begin." Adil could see the inner turmoil swirling in Maya's mind. The betrayal she had felt, the pain of being abandoned, the years spent alone. It wasn't something she could just let go of. Even with Mr. Kamal's apologies, it was hard to imagine a world where she could trust him again. She turned away, her hands trembling as she wiped her tears. She felt suffocated by the weight of their words, by the expectations they had placed on her. How was she supposed to heal from this? How could she move forward when the past kept pulling her back? "Maybe I should leave," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. "Maybe it's better if I just disappear again, like I did before. It's easier that way." "No, Maya, please," Adil said urgently, stepping forward. "You don't have to do this. Don't let your past control you anymore. You're not that person anymore. You've made it this far, and you deserve happiness. You don't have to go back into hiding." Her eyes flickered to him, and for a moment, he thought he saw something in her gaze, a glimmer of hope. But it was fleeting, as if it had been snuffed out by the weight of the past. "I don't know if I can trust him again," Maya said, her voice shaking as she looked at Mr. Kamal. "I don't know if I can ever believe that he actually wants to make things right. He left me. He abandoned me when I needed him the most. How do I just turn that off?" Mr. Kamal stepped forward, his voice full of desperation. "Samira, I can't change the past. I can't undo the hurt I've caused you. But I promise you, I'll never turn my back on you again. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to make up for all the lost time." Maya's face softened, but only slightly. She looked at him, as if searching for some hint of sincerity, some sign that he truly meant it. It was then that she noticed something, a small detail she hadn't picked up before. She saw the way his hands shook, how he was trying so hard to hold it all together. His eyes were filled with regret, yes, but also something else, guilt, pain, and a desperate need for forgiveness. The silence between them stretched for what felt like an eternity. Maya's heart was torn in two. Part of her wanted to run away, to close herself off from this entire mess. The other part of her, the one that still held a sliver of hope, wanted to believe that there was a way forward, that there was a chance for healing. But it was so hard to see the light through the shadows. Adil watched the exchange silently, knowing that the decision wasn't his to make. He could only stand by and support Maya, no matter what choice she made. He had always admired her strength, but now he saw the depth of her pain. He wished there was a way to take it all away for her. Finally, Maya spoke, her voice hoarse but steady. "I don't know what to do, Kamal. I really don't. I want to believe you, but I can't just forget everything." Mr. Kamal's eyes softened as he nodded. "I don't expect you to forget. I know it's going to take time. But I'll be here, Samira. Every day, I'll prove that I'm not the man I was. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. For you. For us." There was a long pause as Maya processed his words. She felt the weight of the decision press down on her chest. Forgiveness wasn't easy. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance to rebuild their relationship. Maybe it wouldn't be perfect, but it was better than the cold distance they had kept for so many years. "I don't know if I'm ready yet," Maya said quietly, her voice trembling. "But I'll try. I'll try to forgive you." Tears welled up in Mr. Kamal's eyes as he nodded gratefully. "That's all I ask for. A chance." Adil smiled softly, relieved to see that there was at least a glimmer of hope. It wasn't the perfect ending, not yet, but it was a start. And sometimes, that's all you needed, just a beginning. The next few weeks were difficult. Maya had agreed to give Mr. Kamal a chance, but she wasn't ready to just forgive him overnight. She still saw the years of pain and abandonment, still felt the loneliness that had become her constant companion. The process of healing wasn't going to be quick, and she wasn't sure if she even knew where to begin. Adil, as always, stood by her side, a quiet support she could rely on. He never pushed her to talk or to act before she was ready. He knew, deep down, that Maya had to find her own way through the darkness. All he could do was be there, a steady presence in the storm. Mr. Kamal, on the other hand, threw himself into the task of proving himself to Maya. He called her every day, sending her messages of encouragement, asking how she was doing. At first, Maya was indifferent. She would respond with short answers, her heart closed off, her walls still firmly in place. She wanted to forgive him, but there was so much hurt buried deep within her that she didn't know how to let it go. And then one day, Mr. Kamal asked to meet her for lunch. Maya hesitated at first. She didn't know if she was ready to face him again, but something in his voice told her that this meeting wasn't just about apologizing. It was about trying to build something new, something better. When they met, the atmosphere was awkward at first. Maya sat across from Mr. Kamal, her eyes not meeting his. He seemed to sense her unease and didn't speak for a while, allowing the silence to stretch out. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I know you don't owe me anything, Samira," he said softly. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not asking for your forgiveness just for my own peace. I'm doing this because you deserve better. You deserve a life where you're not weighed down by the past, by what I did." Maya's gaze flickered to him, her lips pressed tightly together. She wasn't sure what she expected from this conversation, but it wasn't this kind of vulnerability. Mr. Kamal had always been so controlled, so powerful, and yet here he was, admitting his faults in front of her. For the first time, she saw him as something more than the man who had hurt her. She saw him as a brother, a man trying to make amends. "I don't know how to do this," Maya whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to move past everything that happened. I want to believe that you've changed, but I don't know if I can." "I understand," Mr. Kamal replied. "I can't change the past, but I will prove it to you. Every day, I'll show you that I'm not the man I was before. I'll show you that I care, that you matter." Maya swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. She wanted so badly to believe him, to trust that he was truly sorry. But the pain of the past still held her back. How could she move forward when the scars were so fresh? She wasn't sure how to begin, but she knew she couldn't keep holding on to the past forever. "I can't promise that everything will be okay," Maya said, her voice trembling. "But I can try. I'll try to trust you again." Mr. Kamal's eyes filled with emotion, and he nodded gratefully. "That's all I ask for, Samira, a chance." As they sat together, talking quietly, Maya realized something important. It wasn't about forgetting the past or erasing the hurt. It was about moving forward, step by step, even if it meant taking things slowly. She didn't have to forgive him in an instant. She didn't have to pretend that everything was perfect. What mattered was that they were both willing to work at it, to rebuild what had been broken. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Maya began to let her guard down. She started answering Mr. Kamal's calls with more than just short replies. She began to open up about her feelings, her pain, and her fears. It wasn't easy, and there were days when she felt like retreating back into the safety of her isolation. But each small step forward made her realize that healing was possible, even if it wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when Maya wondered if it was all too much, too soon. She questioned if she was being too hasty, if she was putting herself in a position to be hurt all over again. But each time those fears crept in, Adil was there to remind her that she was in control of her own healing. She wasn't doing this for anyone else. She was doing it for herself. As the days passed, Maya found herself changing in ways she hadn't expected. She started seeing the world differently, not through the lens of her past pain, but through the possibility of what the future could hold. She began to forgive herself for the things she couldn't change, and slowly began to see Mr. Kummel not as the man who had abandoned her, but as someone who had been lost and was now trying to find his way back. One evening, when the sun was beginning to set, Maya sat down with Mr. Kummel at a small cafe. It was the first time they had met outside of their family's office. She looked at him for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything that had passed between them. "You know," Maya said quietly, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup, "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we can ever be the family we once were. But I'm willing to try." Mr. Kummel's eyes softened with gratitude. "That's all I can ask for." Maya smiled faintly. She wasn't sure what would happen in the coming months. She didn't know if she would ever fully forgive her brother, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Hope that the future wasn't defined by her past. It was still uncertain, still a work in progress, but it was something she could shape with time. Months had passed since Maya had begun the long, difficult journey of healing. She had made peace with many of her past wounds, though some of them would always remain. The time she had spent rebuilding her relationship with Mr. Kummel had been challenging, but it had also been enlightening. She had learned so much about herself, about forgiveness, and about the complexities of human emotions. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Despite all the progress, the lingering fear of being hurt again clouded her heart. Maya had always been independent, fiercely so. She had learned to survive on her own, to protect herself from the world's harshest truths. But now, with every step she took toward healing, she was confronted by a new challenge. Trusting again. How could she fully let go of the past? How could she truly move forward when the scars were still visible? It was one cold evening when the moment of truth arrived. Maya had been invited to a family dinner at Mr. Kummel's house. It had been months since they had gathered together as a family, and Maya wasn't sure if she was ready. But Mr. Kummel insisted, and Adil encouraged her to go. He knew how important this was, how much it would mean for Maya to take this step. It was a test, a moment that could either bring them closer or pull them farther apart. As Maya stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress, she could feel the familiar weight of anxiety pressing down on her chest. She wasn't sure what to expect. Would Mr. Kummel continue to show that he had changed? Would he be the brother she had once known, or was this all just an illusion? Could she ever truly trust him again? She had spent years convincing herself that she didn't need anyone. The loss of her mother, the abandonment by her father, the betrayal of her brother, each wound had taught her that relying on others was a weakness. But now, with the possibility of reconciliation hanging in the air, she wasn't sure anymore. Could she let go of her fears? Could she allow herself to be part of a family again? Adil knocked gently on the door. "Maya, are you ready?" Maya took a deep breath, glancing at herself in the mirror one last time. She nodded, trying to calm the storm inside her. "Yeah, I'm ready." The dinner started off well enough. Mr. Kummel greeted her at the door with a warm smile, his eyes filled with hope. Maya smiled back, though her heart still felt heavy. The rest of the family was already seated at the table, their faces filled with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. It was clear that they, too, were uncertain about this gathering. For a while, the conversation was light, filled with small talk and polite smiles. Maya found herself slipping into her old role, quiet, observant, the one who stayed in the background. She was careful with her words, watching Mr. Kummel from the corner of her eye. He, in turn, kept glancing at her, trying to gauge her mood. There was no denying it. They were both walking on eggshells. As the night went on, the tension in the room slowly began to dissolve. The laughter grew louder, the conversations more animated. Maya, despite herself, found herself drawn into the conversations. She laughed at a joke, added a comment here and there, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. But just when it seemed like the evening would end on a peaceful note, something happened that stopped Maya in her tracks. As the meal came to a close, Mr. Kummel stood up, his voice trembling slightly as he cleared his throat. I have something I need to say," he began, his eyes searching Maya's face. "Samira, Maya, I know I've hurt you. I know I've failed you. And I don't expect forgiveness, not right away. But I wanted to do something for you tonight, something to show you how much I've changed, how much I want to make things right." Maya's heart skipped a beat. The room fell silent as everyone turned their attention to him. She felt the weight of their eyes on her, but more than anything, she felt her heart pounding in her chest. Mr. Kummel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. The moment he opened it, Maya's breath caught in her throat. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, a pendant in the shape of a heart. It wasn't extravagant or flashy, but it was beautiful, simple, yet full of meaning. "I want you to have this," Mr. Kummel said softly. "It's a symbol of my promise, a promise to be there for you, no matter what. A promise that I'll never turn my back on you again." Maya's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the necklace. The gesture was unexpected, and the sincerity in his voice hit her harder than she could have imagined. It wasn't just a necklace. It was an apology, an offering of a future, a hope for something better. For a long moment, Maya didn't know how to respond. She was torn between the emotions that had been buried for so long. She had spent so many years holding on to her pain, her anger, her fear. Could she let go of it all? Could she accept this offer, this attempt at rebuilding something that had been broken? Mr. Kummel stepped closer, his eyes pleading for a response. "Maya, please. I know it's not easy. I know it's going to take time. But please, let me try. Let me prove to you that I've changed." The room was quiet, all eyes on Maya. She could feel the weight of their expectations, but more than anything, she felt the weight of her own heart. Maya took a deep breath, her fingers brushing over the pendant. She looked up at Mr. Kummel, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can forgive you completely," she said, her words fragile. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to trust you, again." Mr. Kummel's face lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude. He stepped forward, gently placing the necklace around her neck. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance." As the evening came to a close, Maya felt something shift inside her. It wasn't the complete healing she had hoped for, but it was a start. The road ahead was still uncertain, still filled with obstacles, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like there was hope. There was a chance for forgiveness, for healing, for rebuilding what had been lost. As she walked out of the house with Adil by her side, Maya looked up at the sky, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to face it. With the past behind her and a small spark of hope in her heart, she took her first step toward a new beginning. It had been weeks since that fateful night. The evening when Maya had made the difficult decision to give her brother, Mr. Kummel, a chance to prove that he could change. It wasn't easy. Every day had been a struggle, filled with moments of doubt, confusion, and fear. But something had shifted within her, something she hadn't expected. She had let go of the past, little by little, and allowed herself to be open to the possibility of a future where she didn't have to carry the weight of old wounds. One afternoon, Maya found herself sitting by the window of her apartment, looking out at the bustling street below. The world was moving on, just as it always had, but she felt different now. Lighter, freer. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding on to until she started to let go. It was as if the chains that had bound her heart had finally started to loosen. The sound of a knock at the door broke her thoughts. She got up, smoothing the creases in her dress, and walked over. When she opened it, there stood Mr. Kummel, holding a bouquet of her favorite flowers in his hands. His eyes were soft, and there was a vulnerability in his expression that took Maya by surprise. "I know it's not much," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But I wanted to bring these for you, just to remind you that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Maya's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him. He had come so far in such a short time. The man who had once abandoned her, the man who had caused her so much pain, was now standing before her with nothing but honesty and regret in his eyes. It was hard to believe, but there was no denying the sincerity in his actions. "Thank you," Maya said quietly, accepting the flowers. She didn't know what else to say. Her heart was full, but her mind was still processing everything. There was so much history between them, so much pain. How could she fully forgive him? Could she ever forget what had happened? But as she looked at him, she realized that maybe forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant moving forward despite the scars. Mr. Kummel stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I know I can't undo what's been done. I know I can't make up for all the years we lost. But I want to try. Samira, I want to be the brother you deserve. I want to make up for the time I stole from you." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. The emotion she had been holding back came rushing to the surface. She had spent so much time angry, so much time blaming him for the things that had gone wrong in her life. But in this moment, standing in front of him, she realized that holding on to that anger wasn't going to heal her wounds. It was only going to keep her stuck in the past. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive you," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "But I want to try. I want to have a chance at having a relationship with you again. I don't know what that will look like, but I'm willing to figure it out." Mr. Kummel's face softened, and he reached out, gently taking her hand. "That's all I can ask for," he said. "A chance." The silence that followed was filled with understanding. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from tension or fear, but one that came from mutual respect and recognition. They had both suffered, both lost time, both made mistakes. But they were here now, together, trying to build something new from the ashes of their past. Maya looked down at the bouquet in her hands, her fingers gently brushing the petals of the flowers. It was a simple gesture, but it meant the world to her. It was a symbol of everything they had been through, everything they had survived, and a promise of what was to come. She looked up at Mr. Kummel, meeting his gaze for the first time in weeks. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "I'm scared that I'll get hurt again, that this will all fall apart." Mr. Kummel's expression softened, and he stepped closer, his voice gentle. "I can't promise that it will be easy. I can't promise that we won't have setbacks. But I promise that I'll always be here, trying my best, and I'll never give up on you." Maya felt a weight lift off her shoulders as she heard those words. It wasn't a perfect promise, but it was real. And that, for her, was enough. It wasn't about having everything figured out right away. It was about showing up, day after day, and doing the work. "I think that's all I need," Maya said quietly, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and hope. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. It wasn't the perfect closure she had once imagined, but it was the kind of new beginning that she had longed for. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew she wasn't alone anymore. She had her brother back, and more importantly, she had herself back, whole, healed, and ready to move forward. As the evening sun cast a warm glow over the city, Maya and Mr. Kummel stood together, their silent promise to each other hanging in the air. They didn't need to say anything more. The journey ahead would be difficult, but it would also be worth it. And no matter what, they would face it together. The road to healing was long and filled with challenges, but Maya knew now that the most important thing was that she had taken the first step, and with that, everything was possible.